Hello, good afternoon. My name is Bárbara Gallardo Montes, and I did my practices in profession in Hospital Ángeles Valle Oriente in Monterrey. And my project was the administration and management of biomedical equipment. First of all, the description of my project, it was guided by the director of biomedical engineering in the hospital. His name is Pablo Eliud Gonzalez Rodriguez. And my project consists in learning about the different medical equipment that is required to run a hospital successfully, which equipment is used in which areas of the hospital, how are they used, and what are the cautions you need to take with each one of them. I learned part of the administration, which were service reports and technical support reports, the use of the equipment, and the preventive and corrective maintenance of the different equipment that the biomedical department was in charge of. Some of my objectives were to carry out an inventory of the medical equipment used to check the correct placement and verify that it's in the correct part of the hospital. Since the hospital is so big, sometimes the equipment from the emergency room might be changed to the neonatal care section, so we have to make sure that everything is in place in case of any departments lacking any of their equipment. Another objective of mine was to aid in the technical support of the different areas inside the hospital by doing hands-on repair of the different equipment and to check the correct functioning of all of this equipment. And finally, my third objective was to perform preventive and corrective maintenance to all the biomedical equipment by cleaning, calibrating, doing different safety checks, and a series of tests so that we could check that the correct functioning of the different equipments available. To complement the objectives, I gave myself the goals as to create an Excel spreadsheet for the area of neonatal care with all its available biomedical equipment, which includes the areas of where they're in, its label, its control number, and its serial number. For my second goal, I decided to report the weekly or monthly preventive maintenance reports for the different equipment, as are the thermal nursery beds, incubators, glucometers, and defibrillators. And lastly, since there's a method that is done every week, which is the preventive maintenance of the defibrillators, I decided to make a small checklist so that each of the engineers that is in charge of doing it could just go through it and make sure that all of the steps were done, so none of them are missed, with a calendar to the side so that they would make sure that all of the 4 weeks of the month that they would do the preventive maintenance. And I did this because it is important for the defibrillators to always be ready, since they are in every section and they could be used in any point in the hospital. For the inventory, I decided to do some of the specifications that I took were, since this is in the neonatal care where all the babies are received, first there has to be the control label. This control label is given by the hospital, which includes which area they're supposed to be in, and inside this area which number they are, and the serial number of the different equipment, so that we could, in case the control label came off, we could see the serial number and locate it inside the inventory, the brand, and the brief description of this equipment. For the reports that I have to do for both corrective and preventive maintenance, the specifications were the type of service, the department that solicited this maintenance, the date in which it was done, the control number of the equipment, the name of the equipment, the flow reports, and in case that it is just a preventive maintenance, to note that since there is no flow, it is just routine. The work that is being done, the time of the procedure, if it is an internal or a lease. Since the hospital is kind of new, most of the equipment is on a lease, so it is not part of the hospital. So when corrective or preventive maintenance has to be done to this equipment, people from the companies who own this equipment come and they do the maintenance and make us a report but then we have to change it to the format of the hospital so it's easier to understand and so it has the same organization. And in case there are any observations while doing the maintenance, we have to also write them down. And lastly, for the manual or checklist that I did for the defibrillator, I first looked for the basic steps that were needed, the instruments that are needed besides the defibrillator, a checklist of all the defibrillators inside the hospital since there are many in different areas such as ER, and the calendar which included a small box which you could be checking that each week it would be done to make sure that the defibrillator would be working. Some of the regulations that the hospital follows is, since it is certified by the Consejo de Salubridad General, which is a legal authority in Mexico established by the 73rd article of the Constitution, and inside this regulation, the ones that regard the biomedical department are standard PCI .9, which reads that the organization should reduce the risk of infectious diseases associated to the maintenance and control of engineering, which includes the good hygiene and reduction of infectious risk by cleaning the ventilation system, having control of the temperature of the hospital, and the quality of the water. This is related to my project since every time we give preventive or corrective maintenance to any of the equipment, we must be sure to wear gloves and use a solution that has both Clorox and water to wipe away all of the infectious bacteria, since sick patients use this equipment or doctors who are operating with sick patients touch this equipment. When we give it maintenance, it is also our job to clean it thoroughly so that no infectious diseases from a patient get passed on to another. Also, the standard FMS .6, which is considered an essential standard, reads that the organization must implement the program to maintain the equipment and biomedical technology. This program consists of the identification and analysis of the necessities of the patients and the services the hospital provides. The subsection C points out that the evaluation and categorization of the equipment and technology must be made through inspections, tests, calibration, and both corrective and preventive maintenance. In the subsection G, they also mention the importance of training all of the staff that is going to be in contact with the management, maintenance, and utilization of the biomedical equipment. This is also highly related to my project since the importance of an inventory is mentioned to keep count and keep the equipment constantly checked so that it is in prime conditions. Also, it is mentioned that the accountability of corrective and preventive maintenance is of utmost importance, which is something that is directly linked to my participation in the hospital's project. And lastly, in the standard SAD 2.6, it is mentioned that the Department of Biomedical Engineering must be involved in the area of radiology and imaging, which follows the same standards of identification and analysis of all the needs of the equipment may be having, depending on its usage and functions. The equipment must be also submitted to inspections, tests, calibration, and both types of maintenance, but the capacitation for these types of equipment is of utmost importance since some of them have special gear that must be worn, for example, for the radiation to not affect the patient or the person who is applying the test, or in the case of the MRI, so the magnetic field won't be affected by magnetic items on the patient, on the nurses, or on the equipment inside the MRI machine. And lastly, in this case of my project and the involvement of the standards, it is important to report the preventive and corrective maintenance that is being made to the equipment from external companies. Since they are analysts, all the procedures done to them are made directly by their own technicians. My contribution to this project especially was the time management that we gave aid to this department because the biomedical department inside the hospital is very small and there's a lot of equipment that needs maintenance, preventive or corrective, and sometimes they're really rushed and they don't have time to attend to some things. So I was with the other two practitioners, and with their help they could be able to get to all of the parts of the hospital and have time to still do the reports, And that's something that also I really helped on, was the organizational tasks of this department, because since they're so busy, they don't have time to organize, and this causes for them to lose papers or to lose track of things. And I made folders, I organized them with the different equipments, so that when they need to go back, they could just look for the folder and look for the different maintenances that had been made, and if any corrective maintenance was made to it, to check, so that if batteries have just been replaced and they were reported to be failing again, they could just check, and it's probably some kind of misplacement of the batteries, and that helps a lot to the department. For my learning experience, the thing I learned the most was to do preventive maintenance to these equipments, which are the flow meter, the incubators, the glucometers, the vital signs monitor, the thermal cradle, which is in the neonatal care area, and the defibrillator. And after doing all of these maintenances, we had to make a order of service or a report which mentioned all that had been done. If there were any failures, we had to specify which item we were doing, how long it took us. And after doing these maintenances, we had to use the software called Zebra Printer, which helped us do different stamps for the control. In case that the control label had been washed off, we had to make a new one, as it can be seen in the bottom right corner. And on top is a calendar that we have to paste in each of the different equipment that we would give maintenance to show when the maintenance had been done and when it had to be done again, so that they could keep track of the effective maintenance inside the departments. And lastly, for my conclusions, during this experience, I have learned thoroughly the job of a biomedical engineer inside the hospital system. The contributions made from me to the hospital were efficient and proved my capabilities that had been developed in the university. The maintenances were made in a correct manner, and it was very interesting to know how to be able to have the skill set for later opportunities. The administration of the hospital was also very complex, but I have a sense now of all that must be done from the part of the biomedical engineering staff. I believe that the hospital is very well equipped, since it has some of the most innovative technology in Mexico, and it also has very new and well equipped installations. The different safety measures used inside this hospital to avoid infectious diseases from spreading is impeccable, and they make sure that all the employees take a course at the beginning. Even I took this course that explains the guidelines that have to be set inside the hospital. Overall, I enjoyed this experience since it made me investigate the more practical sense of the undergraduate degree. While being on the hospital, I also realized that the environmental impact of the hospital is hard to control, since so many of these things that are used are disposable to avoid any type of transmission of infections. But I would consider changing the staff's disposable dishes, utensils, and cups, which could be changed for reusable or washable utensils. Although the hospital has a great social impact in its community due to its professionality and guarantee of great service both to the patient and employees. Thank you very much. This was my experience, and I hope you liked it.